been back and forth on just now because the time on the Zoom has been changed. What we'll do is we'll just keep going through our stuff, and then when he joins, we will switch to him. Attendance, we have a quorum. Is anyone absent? I don't believe so. Nope. Okay, great. Let's see. Last meeting, we had agreed. The only person that was not present was Ellie. We had agreed to be more formal in reviewing with accepting and motioning of action items, and that will be carried forward, as well as the public will be able to comment at the end of the meeting for a period of 3 minutes each. We can extend time if we so choose, but during the actual proceedings of the meeting, we would request that the public not comment until we were at the end of the meeting. And that was unanimous by all those who were attending. Everybody, I assume, has read the meeting minutes. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any edits or changes to the minutes?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
Seconded.
All right, they are admitted.
Any additions, deletions?
Everyone agrees?
Any objections?
Disagree?
Any additions or deletions? Hearing none.
Hearing done.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay.
Very well done.
We've done this before. So Dr. Blossey is not on yet, so we will wait till he joins. So let's go to the some old business. Ellie and Chris, have you had any progress on the health of the forest?
Sure, I can. Ellie, do you mind if I start?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay, I'll go for it. So I reached out to state, local agencies, and the university at Syracuse to find forest ecologists to consult. First I contacted New York State DEC, spoke with Albany headquarters staff, and then they referred me to the urban forester who oversees our region, which is known as Region 3. She was thrilled and happy to hear that we were addressing this issue. They have a consulting forester list. Most I found out so far are foresters with a focus on timber and logging. Our requirements are narrower, and the pool of qualified individuals and firms seems small. I then spoke with Jack Max over at Rye Nature Center, who spoke highly of both Dr. Begley and also C.J. Riley over in Irvington. He said that Begley would be a fantastic contact since she has already done most of the heavy lifting and created a program for a very similar town. Jack said in the winter, Rye Nature Center generally has around 30 to 40 deer, and bow hunting really seems to be the best option and most effective in his opinion. I then contacted Syracuse University, School of Environmental Science, where I reached Professor Joshua Millpaw, who studies large mammals, etc., for a long time, and their interplay with woodlands and populated areas. He expressed interest in consulting, whether it is he or someone else from that department. He said he would submit to the chair for review as to whom may be best to address. I sent him a copy of Dr. Begley's proposal with all the numbers whited out. So if he comes back with some of these, we can compare apples and apples. And I said that methodology to proceed would basically be as per that format. However, we are open to recommendations. I contacted C.J. Riley over in Irvington. As you'll know, I guess I CC'd everybody. He has a font of can-do, have done it knowledge. He is open and willing to share with us. I spoke to him about a site visit the week after Thanksgiving, being December 1 to 5. If anyone is interested, let me know. Let's see how we can accommodate most schedules. Jasmine suggested opening the invitation to others. Sounds good to me. Finally, I suggest that we wait for feedback, say, from Syracuse and maybe input from C.J. Riley, and then make a decision on moving forward with a forest ecologist.
When you say site visit, what would the site be?
It'd be over there in Irvington.
Oh, over there, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he'd walk us through, because he's in charge of that.
Got it.
So I,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great.
Any other questions?
Not for me. Ellie, do you have comments?
She's eating.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry, buddy.
I think that the field tour would be the most interesting, and the most useful to us. So Chris and I already spoke about this, so I'm going to be there.
Okay, great. So what we're gonna do is I see Dr. Blossey has joined. So I'm going to stop here. We'll come back to our old business. And we will have Dr. Blossey give a presentation. As everybody knows, we had a list of questions for him. I believe he prefers to be referred to as Bernd, not Dr. Blossey. And we listed out a bunch of questions that we would like to have covered initially, and then we also, he's been in contact with Jax Mack at the Rye Nature Center based on Brian and Stephanie's suggestions. So, Bert, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Slight correction on pronunciation is Bernd.
Oh, sorry.
There and put an NDT at the end, then you will be just fine.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. You're not the only one who makes me like I'm on fire, but that's okay. So let's see what I get us going here. Thank you for the opportunity. I share your struggles. I know what you're going through. I'm gonna do a little mix thing. I have your questions at the end, but I'm giving you an initial overview of what we have done, what the struggles are, what we have learned, so that you can get a little bit of a background on all of this. I assume I can share my screen with all of you. Let's see whether that works. And I guess I need to do this. And hopefully start at the beginning. You able to see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, John, is there a way for me to turn off some of the lights?
Okay, so here's
Thank you.
here is the situation that you may have encountered. Blend your deer on the landscape. The question that always comes: are there endangering fauna and flora and people? How do we know that it's actually deer and not something else, or are there what I call stressors, climate change, whatever else can come to mind? And then what can we do about it? I'm going to show you part of these aspects. You know how to get in touch with me if you wanted to. I'm happy to follow up on whatever we discuss here today. I just want to preface this. I care about and want to protect native species and ecosystems. So I'm an ecologist by heart. I got all my training as an entomologist and working with non-native or invasive species. But deer forced themselves onto the agenda because without deer control, there will not be conservation possibilities in the Northeast and over much of North America. So I manage deer to prevent their negative ecological and to a little bit economic impacts. So what we typically encounter, and I have to tell you, I have not been at Rye other than on the freeway. So I don't have the detailed knowledge that you all have, but I assume from what I know from other places in Westchester County and Connecticut, your landscapes may not look too different from what I'm showing here, and many of those will lack the understory, the shrub layer, and basically the transition from the acorns or the seeds that fall on the ground that produce seedlings then to transition back into trees. So over time, we'll lose the tree landscape that we have, the forest fragments or whatever we have in our gardens or in our forests, and you have plenty of those in the city of Rye. A quick overview flight on a website will allow me to see that, and you will see some pictures of that. So it's well known, it's widely documented. You are nothing special, I have to say, in that extent, but the struggles that you have are always somewhat unique. That is not a localized effort. It goes throughout the Atlantic region on the Northeast, with a few exceptions in Maine. Basically, we show, or people have shown that we lack the forest regeneration that will rejuvenate the forest that we have after they die or are being cut, without greatly reducing deer abundance. So what do we really know? This cute little buttonbuck here is responsible with his relatives as being an ecosystem engineer. They're a key for Lyme disease. We can talk about that in a little bit more, but there's no Lyme disease or there was no Lyme disease in New York City until the deer arrived, and they're filtering in from the Bronx and from Staten Island and other places. There's no Lyme disease in Manhattan. It's clear from a long-term Connecticut study, very close to where you are actually, that if you greatly reduce deer abundance, Lyme disease and incidence in people plummets. But recreational hunting, and as you will see from my presentation and others, is not able to reduce the deer numbers down to something where that tick population collapses. There's an ecological reason for that. Deer are the only big mammal where female ticks are actually congregate, have enough of a blood meal to produce the thousands of eggs that they do. So yes, they get the borreliosis from mice and from birds and others, but they need to feed on a big host, and deer are the only big host that's available. That's what's missing in New York City. There's plenty of rats and rodents and to sustain the borreliosis. If the females would be able to find a deer in Central Park and other places, they will not be able to find that. So we have a threshold. We don't know what that threshold is, that the deer numbers need to go down below a certain number per square mile or square kilometer to then have the tick population collapse. You can eradicate deer on islands, and when there was Lyme disease before, there's no longer Lyme disease. Occasionally, tick will arrive on a bird or something like that, but no Lyme disease. There's thousands of studies, not on Lyme disease, but on other effects of deer. There's really no new evidence needed to say it's deer that are driving ecological deterioration. But the questions that are always asked, and that's probably what your committee struggles with, is it happening here? Is it happening in the city of Rye? And how do you know? How do we know that these effects occur locally, infect our neighborhoods, plants, birds, insects, and otherwise? It's interesting that that is often asked of ecologists, not of engineers. We know a seatbelt works in Seattle as it does in Washington, D.C., right? It's not questioned. But for ecological principle, it's always asked. And maybe rightly so. And the deer obviously interact with other stressors, including climate change. With the warming since over the last few decades, deer don't face strong winters anymore. So the massive kills that were associated with strong winters, where maybe 30–40% of the surviving deer population in the winter died, do no longer occur. So deer benefit from climate change and the warming. The question then always is locally asked, how many deer do we need to remove? And is that actually the right question? I will address that to change the trajectory of your local environments. So how do we know it's deer? Well, you can put some cameras out in the woods, and then we can have a deer eating all the planted oaks that we put out to rejuvenate the Leopold property. It doesn't take many deer. This deer eat 5 or 6 oaks within the 20 seconds that we have here. That eliminates your local planting very quickly. Oh, somebody is looking. So it doesn't take long for deer to eliminate the plantings that you have. So my central claim, and I'm not going to go through all of this, is deer really are at the center of an ecological and human health crisis that vastly underestimated. It doesn't only affect the understory plants and the trees, it affects decomposition, carbon sequestration, birds, pollinator, insects, human life through tick-borne diseases, and so forth. So the deer are at the center of all of this. I'm not going to go much into that one, but I'm showing you a few other things. And what is at the core of this, and I don't assume I don't know anything about your background, what demography is, right? But demography is the study of life and death. How do we know how many people will be on the planet in 20 years? There are models to allow us to estimate what the numbers are based on fertility rates, on economic indicators, on past studies on how many of the children that were born will be surviving, and so forth. So we can build models to do that. We have similar models for all kinds of organisms, from small plants like our trilliums here, to larger individuals like oaks, or to birds. But what is essential is that every single stage here needs to be able to transition to the next one. So a female bluebird needs to be able to lay eggs in a safe place. These eggs should not all be eaten to be able to produce young. Those young need to have enough food and grow up and not be eaten to then become juvenile and then return to be adults. Throughout that process, some of them will die through to diseases, predation, and otherwise, right? There's a short life cycle. They don't live many years. Oaks live hundreds of years. So they need to transition from the acorn to a small seedling, and then to a sapling, a larger sapling, to then become maybe 300, 400, 500-year-old oaks to fulfill their life. What deer do, they prevent this transition here, from small seedlings to small saplings that are maybe 3, 4, 5 feet tall. So you will go through your woods probably. You may be finding after mass oak or acorn production lots of seedlings the next year, right? But then that transition to small young trees will not happen. That's where the deer are sorting it out. It's the same for these trilliums. So charismatic wildflowers, you may not even have, you should have reds. Maybe you don't have whites in the area that you are. Maybe you don't have them at all in your woods anymore because the deer have eaten them all up, because this is deer candy. But we need to understand how deer change the dynamics for each species. We don't need to understand it for all, but it's important that every organism has the capability to transition through its life as best as possible without basically being damned, right, by deer. That's what's important. So why does suburbia matter? Why does urban areas matter? Some of you may have heard about Doug Tellemy's idea to create a national park by private citizens and maybe communities that all together create a much, much larger land area than what we can put into our national parks. He calls that homegrown national parks, right? So suburbia, with the mix that you have, has a critical function in preserving and conserving our local biodiversity, and maybe even the regional biodiversity or continental biodiversity. Birds will migrate through your gardens, through your woodlots. They will find insects there. Pollinators will use the very same thing. So it's a very, very important idea, but urban and suburban areas have been neglected. It's interesting that in Germany, where I grew up, most of the biodiversity now is in cities and suburban areas, because outside of that, with food production and industrial agriculture, insects and birds don't find a home anymore. So they go to suburbia. 90% of all pollinators you can find that exist in the state, New York, you find in New York City. So it's almost like a refuge for a lot of these pollinators that you can go to a city. The city of Rye can function as not like a little Yellowstone, but maybe as a little Yellowstone. Something that resembles this, not as big. No bison migrating through Rye, I assume. Very few cattle probably in the city. But there's a function, there's an importance to the environments that you have, that every landowner has, and that the city has, and that the nature center has, in fulfilling a role in conservation and protecting the diversity that's out there. That's why suburbia matters. So you have this landscape context, right? I just grabbed some screen grabs of whatever it was, Google Earth or something like that, because there were questions that you were asking me. So where I work, is Rye fundamentally different? Well, Rye is different from where I work, but not fundamentally. So here are the landscapes from an aerial view that you are familiar with, right? So wherever you are sitting right now, somewhere on this picture probably. If I tell you where I work, it looks like this. Big roads going through, it's not an interstate, it's just a highway, dense population areas with, wooded corridors along streams or something of that sort. You obviously have a coastline, which we obviously don't have in Ithaca other than a big lake. But it's no fundamental difference, really. So the lessons that we learn here will be applicable to what you could implement or try to implement in Rye. How did I come to all of this? Well, Cornell, like any community, Cornell's a big landowner, and we struggled with deer management. And in the past, it was coordinated by local facility managers. They allowed their buddies to hunt in whatever areas they had. There were no reductions, but an increases in impact. So the university was concerned about health impacts like Lyme disease and the ecological impacts on our outdoor classrooms. That was a big important one. Our outdoor classrooms were deteriorating. And with this recreational hunting, there was no herd reduction. And most important, we had absolutely no data. Nobody was reporting to the university what was happening. Nobody measured the impacts really out there. So there was at some point an integrated deer management program that used recreational hunting, sterilization, and then a control where none of those was happening in 3 different areas around Cornell University. Deer were marked individually, radio collared, we know where the deer were, we know where they were coming in, and 90% of the herd was sterilized. That's unheard of in terms of sterilization efforts. Usually you have much, much lower numbers. So we didn't reuse, and I'm going to show that in a moment, we used an oak indicator approach. Basically, we planted 1 or 3-month-year-old oaks that are a little over a foot tall into our forest environment. We caged some, and we put them out in areas where the deer were sterilized, in areas where it was allowed hunting, and in areas where there was no deer management. And what you can see, the target level of oak survival, or the ones that are not browsed, is about 15% or so. So if you more than 15% of oaks are being browsed, you will not get oak regeneration. And that's annual browse. And it's kind of like a back of the envelope calculation. It takes an oak maybe 20 years to get out of deer browse height. So if you kind of plot that, Ryan can plot that if he wants to. 50% of the oaks are browsed over 20 years. There's none left that was not browsed after 20 years. But what is interesting here is there's no real difference. So these lower survival rates are where deer had access to, right? They were not in cages, the darker blue. The light blue is where they were in cages. So these areas where we planted them were absolutely suitable to have oaks grow. Oaks would be able to regenerate in these places, but because the deer ate them, they will not be able to do that. And whether you allowed some hunting or sterilization or nothing, there is no difference between these areas. So there's a slightly higher survival rate, but it didn't really matter once we looked at the many different sites. So sterilization, hunting, control, nothing really mattered.
Just quick.
In the way that it was approached by Cornell University. So we said we need to do something different. And so what we did employ by 2013 is called DDP, Deer Depredation Permits. These are special permits that the state gives landowners, including here Cornell, to help reduce the deer damage. These permits are only valid outside of recreational hunting seasons. They're also often referred to as nuisance permits. You may have heard that term. But the official word is DDP, Deer Depredation Permits. Initially developed to help farmers shoot deer over crops throughout the season when there was no hunting season. The way that we're implementing this, it looks a little bit like here on the right. We shoot them over bait that can either be with a feeder or without a feeder in neighborhoods. We have guides here that allow the deer to then come in sideways to allow very safe shots with bows or crossbows at 20 to 30 yards. So it's very, very close. What you do not see here is the tree stand or a blind that's sitting to the left. This is just at the beginning of an area of a season. This automatic feeder would dispense corn at certain hours of the day, typically about half an hour before dusk. So that conditions the deer to show up at a time where people are willing to go out. Very few people are willing to go out at 3 o'clock in the morning, even if the deer are there. We use trail cameras to then understand what's happening at these local sites, because deer use sites at different times of the day or different times of the season. We have a very select group of, and it's small of select participants that I train or we train. We have a small number of shooting locations. We operate from September to April. I refuse to shoot deer in the summer. First, it's very, very hot. Second, you cannot distinguish lactating does from the ones that are maybe have no young, so I don't want to shoot a doe of a fawn that's nursing. As I said, we have participant training. We have tracking dogs. You may see this. That's one of them, just running through the background here. We have a code of conduct document, so people know exactly how to behave. Venison is typically donated, and by doing this approach, we reduce the effort per deer that we can kill to 5 to 8 hours per deer. When we do recreational hunting, people across the board, these are hundreds of individuals that we compared, we collected data, it's about 50 to 60 hours. So this is very effective. You get the deer into the areas that are safe shooting locations, so you don't need to pursue them, you don't need to drive them, that's where they're gonna go. They also smart up, but this is what it looks for a trail camera that then observes deer as they're coming to bait. You may see here this first deer has still ear tags. That was a time when we had all of them marked individually. You can observe deer behavior, but you can see these deer are broadside to the shooters, which is very, very safe discharge for whatever implement you're using. So this is highly effective. Just to tell you, where are we? So I said it's a small number of shooting locations. That maybe not be looking at very small, not all of them are active all the time, but you can see how we nestle them into the edges of very highly densely settled places, right? So obviously we need permission from the adjacent landowners to be able to retrieve a deer if a shot deer runs onto a neighboring property. We have forms, we have other things that allow this. There's a lot of legwork early on, knocking on doors, talking to people, will you allow this, will you not allow this? And we're obviously relying on individual landowners and to allow this to happen. But you can also see that we have a lot of small little woodlots where we put our locations. This is the Lab of Oak here at the northern end. So we can work in little nooks and crannies. The average distance that a deer runs after being shot is 50 yards. Deer in suburban areas do not run very far. Yet this is not a limit. Occasionally they run quite a bit further, depends on the shot quality, obviously. We needed to understand how we can measure deer impacts. There is not a good, reliable way of doing that. And we needed a quick assessment method, because as we were implementing certain things, we needed to understand what we did this year, how was the deer populations and their impact on what we were interested in the next year. Fencing and other things sometimes take decades for things to change. Sometimes it doesn't change at all. So I had a large West Point study at some point funded by the Department of Defense where I needed to compare different forests for their deer impact. How do I do that? If there's a maple forest versus an oak forest versus a pine forest, how do I even know what is happening there? The typical assessment protocols would go out there and say, oh, how many oaks are being browsed, or how many pines are being browsed, or how many maples are being browsed. We don't know how to compare these then and where is high browse pressure or not. So I developed this oak sentinel method where we raise oak. We love red oaks because you can overwinter them in the refrigerator, then plant them out. We no longer put them in cages. That was early on in development. Each individual will be marked by a small metal plate, because we go and use a metal detector to then relocate them. We put about 20 per little small woodlot or neighborhood or so, then go in and measure them, how many have been browsed. we can distinguish whether it was a rodent, like a mouse or a chipmunk or a vole, or whether it was deer, how that's being done. And that's what it basically looked like. You see, you have a metal tag here. We typically have them numbered. We expanded our methods to include golden rods now. We experimented with lots of other methods that people have proposed, but this is the one that we settle on. It delivers very hard data very quickly. The installation of something like this takes maybe an hour or two. Then the monitoring of it takes 20 minutes. And so it's very time efficient of doing that. And we can talk more about that at some point. As I said, we experimented with lots of other different techniques. There's something called AVID that a colleague of mine here at Cornell tried to roll out, and at some point the state wanted to do it. Now they have abundant the effort. There's a system called Twig-Age by Don Waller, but it only measures existing vegetation. There's something called the Tantalis that a person developed. And we figured this out with long-term deer exclusions that we had, how to do that, and we found that our method is the best. It's actually responding to changes in deer abundance in a very interesting way. So this graph here on the right, you need to read from right to left. Because when we started, so remember we had all these deer marked. Both bucks with the blue tag and does with yellow tags. They were trapped in clover traps or under trap nets or with tranquilizers marked, age. Some of them had radio collars. These are really the old ones 20 years ago, right? Now you have GPS units. You don't need to go out there with an antenna trying to find them. So things has changed over time. But we were able, with the efforts that we've done using the nuisance permits, to get the deer numbers down from something around 100, this is in the core Cornell campus area, to something below 50. Associated with that was a decrease in the browse rates. So this is the proportion browse. Remember that I said we need to go down to about 15% that are being browsed. We were able to greatly reduce the browse numbers that's associated with the number of deer in the landscape. But that's only unique to Cornell. So you would be able to use this graph and say we need to have 50 deer per square mile or something like that in Rye. That will not work. But we were not able to get down to 15% with what we were doing. And so we're struggling to maintain this for many different reasons that we can discuss. As we were developing that, communities like yours, these are mostly much smaller than your community, tried to implement their own deer management programs, and they used all kinds of different things, from Cayuga Heights, where there was no hunting, a protracted fight with deer rights groups. They did sterilization, that was too costly. Then they hired White Buffalo from Connecticut to do that, and that didn't work out well enough. This is a very wealthy community. All the Cornell professors live there. Not all of them, I'm not living there, but so many Cornell professors live there. That's only a 1 square mile community. And by 2018, they went to a dart and dispose effort. So police cruisers run around with dart rifles and White Buffalo personnel. They're tracked deer to locations that are baited, then they're being darted, which is silent. The deer don't run. They have a GPS collar on the dart. Once they collapse, they can be relocated, and then they will be killed with saline injection. The unfortunate thing with this approach is they need to go to the landfill, because by using a tranquilizer dart, you can no longer consume the meat. Okay. The interesting thing about that is there was, as I said, and have it here, there was a protracted fight with deer rights groups. Nobody is arguing that this is not appropriate, which boggles my mind. But maybe because we do it to pets, that tranquilizing and then euthanizing animals seems appropriate. For me, it's that may be the only thing that you can do in a highly urban area, but I don't like to see that. The Village of Lansing, I coordinate this program. We did a coordinated bow hunting program early on. Since 2015, nuisance using bows and crossbows in the way that I described that. It's the same with Cornell University, but only in the areas around the campus proper. Outlying areas are still in a recreational hunting program that doesn't do anything to help maintain the outdoor classrooms. The Village of Trumansburg, they have discharge ordinances, which you do not have. started with nuisance permits immediately. The town of Ithaca is 5 years into implementation of a nuisance hunting program, but they're not really very effective because there are very few sites. There are more municipalities around Cornell in the state and others that contemplate doing something similar to what we're doing, and I provide some guidance and information on that, not too dissimilar to what I'm doing with you here now. The city of Ithaca, for whatever reason, does not participate in this entire thing. So it donates deer by the dozens to Cornell University, all migrate up the hill. How they kill deer, they're number 3rd in upstate by car collisions. This is a reasonably small community. Most of the time, it's 35 miles an hour that you can drive there. But they killed 170 deer in 2017. Far more, triple the number that we kill in our organized program at Cornell University. So, what are the public attitudes about deer management? I listened to or saw Ryan shared the public meeting with me, the recording or so. You deal with the public opposition, or maybe not the public opposition, the opposition of some individuals, as everybody else has done. But the decision makers, policy makers, typically hear amplified and well-coded messages, both from hunters and what I call animal welfare groups, right? Those that say we can't kill an individual. We wanted to know, the state surveys hunters and sometimes individuals, what they think about deer management and deer abundance, and they typically ask, do you want more deer, keep the population the same, or do you want fewer deer? Sometimes there is a 4th option in there, or maybe even a 5th. That doesn't get the right answers because it's without context. And so, given what we were doing, is there public support for lethal deer management? And so we did a survey of the New York population, 1,500 respondents from New York, organized by appropriately organized, oversampling rural areas, but also city residents, right? So we were able to separate whether city residents are much more likely to object to deer management or not. And we asked questions. Would you agree to lethally control deer if that would be able to reduce Lyme disease, increase road safety, reduce starvation of deer, increase forest regeneration, help with climate change like carbon sequestration, protect wild plants, protect the economy like for farmers or so, protect other animals, provides protein, helps protect garden plants, or helps provide hunting opportunities. The way that you read this graph is everything on the right side that's highly green is strong support. The stuff that's on the left side and like in a goldenrod color, so here, is opposition. So what you see, there's extremely strong support to reduce deer populations with lethal means for ecological and health reasons, both ecological health and human health. There's very limited support to increase hunting opportunities. That's down here. What I haven't shown you here is that Reuben and Earl residents completely agree. There's no difference between urban residents and rural residents in the way that they fall out on this template. Hunting organizations, others typically say, oh, all the residents in the cities are opposed to lethal management. It's not, it's just because of the way that questions are being asked. We've done very similar surveys in Scotland, where the results are almost identical. We have a paper in progress here throughout the temperate US trying to understand whether political leaning of states would make a difference in this. So in the Mountain West, Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho, would they differ from New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and New Jersey versus California and Oregon and, versus Oregon and Washington State. And we have the Midwest in there as well. Once again, the results are almost identical. Doesn't matter what the political orientation of a state or residents of a state are, how they vote politically, they basically come up with the exact same support for lethal deer management. So what you are doing, if you justify it in the right way, you will find strong support in your communities. I cannot tell you how many people from Rye are in the sample or whether there's any in the sample. but it's a representative sample of residents of New York. Okay, so what did we learn through our work with deer and their impacts? Landscape, both suburban and rural, under severe deer pressure, but the threats are poorly known or recognized. Many people will not know. Recreational hunting in its various forms, whether it's guns or bows or crossbows, is not able to reduce deer population to ecologically acceptable levels. Most of the areas in New York are actually being hunted. 80% of the landscape in New York is being hunted. It's just posted, so most people are being kept out, but other people are going in and doing their hunting. Non-lethal methods show absolutely no promise. They show some promise when you have fenced populations, you want to reduce them. And the Cornell sterilization rate was 90% plus, unheard of in other open populations. The deer reduction that you then have occurred through vehicle collisions and mortality through hunting outside the sterilization zones. So that's not acceptable to me either. Most community leaders have poorly recognized and articulated stewardship responsibility. They care about your sidewalks, they care about the schools and how kids get to, but not necessarily about the local biodiversity. I feel it's their responsibilities. And then they're being yelled at, both from deer rights activists and hunters, and then very often it's a stalemate. But the opposition here fades if leadership is appropriate. The town of Ithaca wanted to introduce the deer management, and they were heavily, and the leaders were heavily afraid that there would be a big blowback because that happened in Cayuga Heights. They held a big community meeting. Not a single person spoke up that said we shouldn't be doing that. So they were very surprised and had all kinds of things prepared. But so they implemented, there's no opposition. But the available toolkit is rather limited to how you can accomplish that. I'm getting to your questions now. Some of those I have addressed in the presentation already. Some of the questions I don't fully understand, so please just interrupt me if I'm going off on a tangent here that you wouldn't want to see me do, or we can do it afterwards. So, as a suburban community, what should we be concerned with? Right, that was one of the first questions that you have. Is the understory a bellwether for the community at large? Absolutely. The future forests, the seedlings, the saplings, they reside in the understory. So foresters are known, if they want to look at the health of the forester, of their forest, they look down. They don't look into the canopy because they want to look into the future. By looking into the future, they look at the seedlings and what is regenerating under the existing tree canopy. If there's no survival in the understory, there are no future trees there. That's what we're facing in lots of areas right now. The main biodiversity in the forest also resides in the understory, but it's the herbaceous ones or the shrubs and others. And that includes many rare and endangered plants and animals, including the birds and pollinators. Then spring wildflower beauty is a welcome aesthetic benefit for those of us that would enjoy being out there, whether it's your old landscape, whether it's the nature center, or whether it's a hike in the woods anywhere. And the host ticks and Lyme disease, not so welcome in this, but the understory is extremely important for everything we want to understand. So this one, I'm not fully understanding this question. Can you explain how the understory is impactful when deer seem to be serving on landscape properties? So if that's what the function of the understory is for the deer or the forested areas, the deer seek refuge in the forested areas or in shrubby areas. That's where they hang out when they sleep or when they give birth, most of the times. Landscape properties and agriculture subsidize deer populations.
So, Bernd,
golf courses, garden clubs, other things, they are a haven for deer.
Bernd,
When I'm just looking at an aerial picture of the city of Rye, that's about as wonderful of a deer habitat as you could imagine. And so, as I said, shelter and some forage at some point. Most of the forage will be outside the woods. That's where the deer get their nutrition from.
Ellie's muted.
Is deer density relevant, or is it secondary metric? Deer density is completely irrelevant, at least for ecological impacts. Deer density may be relevant, and I didn't put that in here for Lyme disease, but we don't know where that threshold is right now. in terms of reducing deer numbers down to maybe 3 or 4 per square kilometer. That's a big dream, by the way. Maybe then the the tick populations will collapse. We don't know. We don't have that story yet.
Bernd, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, sorry. So going back to the understory and the landscape properties. So
Yeah.
what we're seeing is that okay, the deer are out in the night, and then at sunrise they're migrating back into the forested areas and bedding down, or they're even bedding down out in the landscape. The question is, right, I think the ultimate question is, and maybe I won't articulate this properly, is that if we look at just the forested areas, right, and the deer are making their living by eating all sorts of different animals in people's yards that they like, that are, you know, as you say, deer candy, like how do we know how impactful the understory is when they're out there rolling around just eating whatever they see out in the community, and then at sunup, you know, a half hour after sunup, they're back into the forested area, bedding down.
Okay, so I get what you're talking about, Ryan. But let me just say the forest remnants, or even the little belts of forest that you have between properties, like that's what I can see from aerial pictures, right? It's not just a bedroom community. There's more than just sleeping going on. If there would be growth of something, they would be eating it. So we just can't do things like, if you have a golf course, right? You cannot put our ceilings out there to measure what would happen, because, I don't know, every other day somebody runs over them with a mower. So that's not a useful way of looking at that. But we plant things into the forested landscape, they integrate over deer use everywhere. So if there would be something in the forest to eat, the deer will eat it. Otherwise, you would see forest regeneration, right? So if I extrapolate from what you're saying, the deer are just eating out in the landscape, then they go back and sleep in the woods. You would see forest regeneration, but it's not happening because they're also eating in the woods. Just right now, the high quality forage is outside in the fertilized landscape, on the golf courses, in the parks, in the neighborhoods that people garden in. So that's the way that it works.
Yeah, I think that your observation is valid. Is
Does
just
it address what you were after, Ryan?
Somewhat, Brian, you have?
Yeah, I was going to comment that I think your observation is valid, that it's going to impact both the forested areas and the landscape areas.
Deer feedback.
Something's wrong with the mic.
Okay, I go back to deer density. Interrupt me when if it's needed, please. Deer density may be interesting to know for assessing deer vehicle collisions, because we have no good idea what the number of deer means for deer vehicle collision. That's probably somewhat related, right? The more deer you have, the more does running around, the more bucks are chasing them, the higher the probability that some of them will be hit by a vehicle. What we have seen in the village of Lansing, where we implemented our nuisance program, that deer kills on a stretch of highway, that's Route 13, went from once a week to once a month. Okay, so, but the data are really poor because the DPW folks don't like to collect the data. We developed a way that they could enter it using a website. They don't want to do it unless somebody tells them you have to. So that's a problem that you will encounter with lots of other things that we will be talking about. So deer density, not really relevant for what we're talking about. And you asked what data should we focus on, and then you use the term of saying data seems squishy, and I object to that because the data are not squishy. The interpretation of the data is, or the way that data were collected is, right? So if people argue about deer density, that's meaningless to assess deer damage. So you can say, oh, I have 15 deer per square mile. or I have 25 deer per square mile. There's no difference in the abundance of ticks. Absolutely agree. Because deer density needs to go down way below 10, that's the current thinking, to collapse the tick populations. So that argument is meaningless because it's out there in some space where it's not relevant. Same with the number of deer killed. It's meaningless because what is important is the number of survivors and deer damage. So when people do eradication campaign on islands, let's say for goats on the Galapagos or somewhere else, they're not counting the number of goats that they've shot. They're counting the number of survivors. So that's why they have Judas goats, to get them to the very last individuals that are there. They're not killing the Judas goats, even though they're eating as well. It's the number of survivors. The last rat on an island in New Zealand is the important one, or the last two to get, right? And that the cost for doing eradication is exponentially increasing to get to the last survivors. So don't go with numbers of deer killed or something. So are they actually hard data? Absolutely. What we developed with the browse one, you know you have a browse one or not. That's a 1 or a 0 in the way that we are recording that, right? We have a threshold that we developed. No more than 15% of oaks should be browsed in any given year. If you are above that threshold, you need to lower your deer populations. That will be really difficult early on. Deer vehicle accidents, probably very important for your residents, right? But you need to appropriately scale. Don't even contemplate to go and sample every road in the city of Rye. Who will be doing that? Who will be charged with that? But we can develop, or you can develop, a good sample that goes to different areas of Rye and say, here we have a mile of road. Somebody needs to walk that and record every day how many deer were being killed. Could be a citizen science effort. You probably have a DPW. Maybe they're being called to remove deer from the roads. Whatever is possible in terms of data collection, then deer vehicle accidents are appropriate if scaled and sampled. I don't know what your health department does because they stopped the need to report Lyme disease in individuals through the health department. So now it becomes really difficult to understand how many people have been diagnosed and treated for Lyme disease by your local physicians. I don't know how to get to these data, right? So if it's ehrlichiosis or babiosis, new things that come in on board, there is a demand and an obligation to report to the New York Health Department. But I don't think that is happening with Lyme. So I don't know what the city does, what the doctors are doing. Maybe there's a way of getting to some kind of a sampling effort. I don't know how to do it for you because I'm not able to do that. It would be lovely to be able to report that, right? But it may be too much to ask because it would create a sampling nightmare, most likely. There are new methods to assess local deer abundance using camera traps. We're working on that with some other folks, just recording whether a deer was seen or not. We can talk about that if that's of interest, but it's really a sideshow. We don't need to know exactly how many deer you have in Rye when we measure damage directly. Part of this you asked, what do local or what do city officials and communities understand and respond to? I wish I knew better with more sampling, but what I clearly know is that loud voices and pressure tactics can only be overcome with good data. You arguing and trying to be involved in that one with people that just are absolutely vehement, whether they got their story right or not, doesn't really matter for a mayor or town board or whatever that are being yelled at. You've seen that. And so you can come in being calm and say, here's our information, we're doing this for this reason, and we are not there yet. So we need to then kill more deer because we measured their impact directly, not indirectly. It's not hand-waving. Justify the deer management with ecological damage, road safety, or human health. Those are the things that individuals respond to. I don't think the residents of the city of Rye are different from the general New York population, right? So they will respond to that. Justify it, have certain levels. We know it for oaks. We have done it with some goldenrods and some other species. We can do that. We don't know what you want, how many deer vehicle accidents are acceptable in the city of Rye. You probably like to go down to 0. Will not happen, right? Even if you have 3 deer in the city of Rye, one of them will be killed in a year. So that's just what it is. Same with Lyme disease. If you can get to that, fine. Justify it that way. Make sure the program you develop has definitive data that can be defended, and ideally, I will say, be defendable in court as appropriate scientific methods, because you may be taken to court. I don't know what the individuals are doing. The city of, the village of Cayuga Heights was taken to court every single step when they developed a management program up to the state Supreme Court. They lost every time, but they had to expend a lot of effort to go in. The village won every time, but the people that were taking the village to court lost every single time. So implement methods that can be reviewed and amended annually. And so that means you need to have data that are annually and are responsive to what you do to change if they do not make progress towards the goals that you have articulated. You asked about policymakers and community education. Be open about what you're trying to do. Doesn't mean that you need to put a waypoint on every tree stand where a hunter sits or a participant sits, right? But be open of what you're recommending, why you're recommending that, what the reason is for that, and report to the community openly and annually, so people are informed, or at least they have access if they want to know about that. Track the shooting efforts, wounding rates, and others. They're greatly accelerated. I can show you if you want to. I have not done this as part of this program, but I developed a Qualtrics survey to track where each individual sits, how many arrows are being shot, whether the deer is wounded or not, how far the deer ran, where the deer was shot, what was happening to the deer, so that if critics come in and say, hey, you're doing all these wounding, 50% of the deer die days later or whatever it is, I know with our trained participants and the way that we are working, we have 5 to 10% wounding rates, right? So that's way lower than the 50% that people are reporting. But people typically will not know and what to expect. Be open about what you have and change if something doesn't work. Make sure you have vetted individuals to do the shooting. Having many different people is like, it's like a flea circus. You will not be able to do that. You need few individuals that are able to do what you want to do. Efficiency training you may want to implement. I don't know, that's up to you. What has worked in, I assume that was in deer management in the past, right? I would claim nothing so far. That's the frustrating thing, at least to us to get to the ecological goals that are articulated, except fencing, and that only happens in small areas. So you can't do it for the entire city, you can't do it for other places. Some wealthy communities have done that with local gates opening and closing, right? You have an interstate running through your city. So then you're not going to be another toll gate that you're going to install there. What has happened and what was successful was eradication on small islands with sharpshooters. And the limited options that you have at present is recreational hunting, using bows. There's no guns in Westchester County, I believe, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so, but bows, guns, and crossbows, not effective. Doesn't matter. Sterilization, whether it's ovariectomy or tubal ligation, we did both at Cornell. Deer are, I don't know how they're doing it, but they regrow their tubes. So they became pregnant after tubal ligation. The pill is also not an option because it's the same hormone that you have in humans, right? All mammals share the same things, so you cannot use it except if you have a fenced population or an experimental use where you dart the deer and mark him, because there needs to be an expiration date on the deer or a note, do not eat, because the hormones will do this very same thing. DMAP, well, I put it's DMP, and there's a 1A too many in there. So it's deer management permits or deer management assistant permits. I think they're going to go away now. Maybe they have so already. It's just additional permits that the state hands out for landowners to be able to take more deer, also not effective. So then what we have done, the DDP or nuisance programs, either using volunteers, USDA, what are they called, animal services or something like that, or contractors like White Buffalo, has limited effectiveness. It doesn't get you down to the numbers that you really need at the present time. And there's a cost associated with that. Dart and Dispose, like in Cayuga Heights, is highly effective. They were able to really drill down on very, very few individuals in their small community. So it's highly effective, but it's also very costly. And because they're small, they're like a little donut. The deer are filtering in from the outside and then basically eliminate the efforts and the success that they have created. So it's an annual go-in at that. What should you be contemplating? And I'm just repeating myself here. Collect ecological damage using what it's open or something. We can talk more about that. If you can collect deer vehicle collisions, as I said, select sections of road, but the question is who collects the deer. If you can, incidents of Lyme and other tick-borne diseases, if there's a data collection procedure. Tick abundance is also something, but it's cumbersome. It needs highly trained individuals with good eyesight that find the small little larvae or nymphs that you need to have. Make sure you have venison donation. Feed the local food insecure people in your communities. Will increase the acceptance of your program rapidly. What is not useful is property damage, whether it's planting of orchards, because people typically say that's the responsibility of individual landowners. That's a question that you raised in the suburban community. How does the science translate from the studies? No difference. Your suburban community with woods interspersed with other areas, it's a mixed land use community. No difference from what we did at Cornell or any other place. Just as part of that. You can have agriculture in the mix. You have woodlands in there. The only way to really measure something is in the woods unless you measure agricultural damage. Which I think there's very little agriculture in the city of Rye, but I don't know.
There's zero.
Okay, so what should you avoid? Are there rabbit holes? Absolutely, be careful. Number of deer or deer density, I highlighted that already. Don't go down that road. Number of deer killed, not useful. Allowing hunting, you already have hunting bow hunting in the city. Not useful. Fencing as a control, and I didn't really go back and forth much with Jax on what they do at the nature center, but we have done fencing. I have 50 different areas that are behind fences in various places around New York. The largest ones are 2 hectares or 5 acres. It takes decades for their plant communities to change. It's not a useful thing. You need annual information of what you did in 2025 or 2026, how does it affect the deer, the damage in 2027? Fencing will not be able to tell you that. You need the quick control. Quick and easy fixes that other people may be giving you, saying we should be planting other species or others. It's not going to be available for you. Anybody who's offering some snake oil, identify it as snake oil. It will not help you. What's important is to not lose patience. This is a long-term project. It's not going to be done in 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. This is a forever maintenance. It's like mowing the lawn, even though here it's killing deer, right? It will come back. It will regrow. It will repopulate. That's what they're made to do. So you will need to continue to be at it. Do not contemplate sterilization or alternative plantings. Lethal is the only way to go. You can also not relocate these deer, just in case somebody is arguing about that. It's not only illegal and nobody wants them anyway. And do not promise quick results, as I said. You need to be in there for the long haul. The last question that I think Ryan had, what did we learn? Is there one thing? I'm a scientist, so there's not just one thing that we can learn from a 10-year study, right? So let's say we learned many different things. One is that our sentinel or bioindicator plantings work. whether that's with oaks or whether it's with goldenrods. We've done many different assessments, including how wolves would affect deer browse intensity and deer abundance. They don't, so just to give it away, so don't bring wolves to Rye. It's not going to help you. So
What about mountain
that's one
lions?
thing. What was that?
What about mountain lions? Would they help?
No. You also will be a persona non grata once you bring mountain lions into Rye. I'm pretty sure of that. You will have coyotes already, and so they just eat the roadkill. But you need quick assessments to allow annual data to guide your efforts, right? You want to know what happens when you implement a certain way to manage deer. Does it work or not? And you can't wait 10 years before somebody says, oh, it doesn't work. What we have with the Sentinel stuff is suitable for small and large areas. So little woodlots or corridors or something, we can do that. We can work it in small parts, and that integrates over areas of 5 to 10 acres or more. We'll likely need more than one species, so oaks are great to start with. Once deer numbers are down, red oaks are not their preferred browse species. But the DDP or nuisance approach helps, but is not enough. You will be in it. You should cooperate with other landowners, Westchester County parks, or whatever there is. You should be in it together. Try to develop that program together. And things will come to you from Connecticut and from other places in New York, right? So the only really important thing long term is that the state changes the way that deer are being managed. Can't be the responsibility of the city of Rye, but right now that's your responsibility to develop something for whatever your government unit is called. What is important is there needs to be a good local guidance by a dedicated individual or group of individuals to maintain momentum and be able to then guide people that want to participate in that. We have seen that is important. And that's what I had to say. I'm happy to answer all kinds of questions that you may have, go into details. There's a slew of other slides that I have that I don't think were useful to show at this particular point.
Just a small question. You kept talking about goldenrod.
Yes.
Why were you? I didn't follow that. What was that all about?
So it's just another sentinel species or another bioindicator species, right? So we had oaks. They were useful for us because we could easily rear them, put them in a refrigerator, get them in a greenhouse 2 months before you need to plant them out, or 3 months. They were wonderful. But oaks are in the middle of the spectrum of preference for deer, red oaks that is, right? So they're much more likely to browse a trillium. But to regenerate trilliums takes 7 years before you have a tall individual. Not very useful. But goldenrods we can harvest abundantly, and this is zigzag goldenrod or blue stem goldenrod. If you wanted to know which one, they're also broadly distributed. They grow fast. They have the ability to regrow tissue every year. So we typically replant our red oaks every year. So you always start with the same kind of size. They're 2 to 3 months old. So every year that you do your assessment, you know you have the same unit out there, right? So, and that's going to be important to compare from one year to the other. So I didn't show you the data here in my own land where I do heavy-duty deer management. I have now oak regeneration, just fine. They're growing, perfect. However, my white trillions are still being hammered. So I need to do more. So if you were so lucky or so good in being able to reduce deer populations in the city of Rye down to much lower levels than there are now, all your oaks will not be browsed, or very few of them will be browsed. Yet there is still ecological damage. So you need to do a more sensitive indicator, right? So a more sensitive species, and the goldenrods are that. So if you have a goldenrod next to an oak, let's say a blue stem goldenrod or a zigzag goldenrod, and zigzag goldenrod will be eaten, and the oak will be left alone. We would love to work with my anthemon called Solomon's here, right? But again, the natural history of these organisms is so complex and so complicated that you can't regenerate them very quickly. It's very costly.
Bernd, so are you saying, so I'm actually learning a lot about the science behind all this stuff. So are you saying that if we're going to focus on the canopy regeneration, we're looking at red oaks, but if we're focused on biodiversity, we should be looking at something more sensitive across the board. Is that a fair assessment?
So what we have done, ideally you would not want to switch halfway through a process from one indicator species to the next, where it's a complete overhaul, right?
Right.
But if I would say, hey, the goldenrods are more sensitive, and I tell you to plant out goldenrods, all you're going to get is 100% of them are browsed to nibbins. That's also not very good data, right? So it's very frustrating to do that. But if you were to plant, let's say, red oaks and zigzag goldenrod or blue stem goldenrod, you will see maybe 80% browse on goldenrods and 50% browse. I'm just making these numbers up. I have no idea whether that will materialize in the city of Rye. But there will be a difference in the browse intensity. And then as the deer numbers hopefully go down in the city, the browse rates on oaks will decline, and hopefully also decline on goldenrod. But when there are no oaks being browsed anymore, there'll still be goldenrods being browsed. So you can have a long-term trajectory. How did the browse intensity of goldenrods develop over time? We now know we would be able to regenerate an oak forest, right? But will the understory come back? And goldenrod is just a stand-in for a lot of other species in their understory. Many of these species we cannot work with because of the local natural history, right? Long germination times, difficult to grow, and so that's why I would suggest at least two. We've worked with some asters. There's still some work to be done, but those are the species that I would propose you focus on early on.
So not to derail this, but when you spoke to the Natural Areas Association symposium I watched, didn't understand a lot of it, but it seemed to be that.
Sorry.
No, that's my fault, not yours. You seem to speak a lot about the insects and how the lack of browse and such is impacting the insects and even below the surface of the soil, making it more barren if we don't do something for biodiversity under the soil itself, as opposed to just what we see above the soil. Can you touch on that? Like pretend I'm 6 years old and try and explain it to me that like I'm a finance guy and I don't understand what you're talking about.
I can't pretend that, but we'll try. So deer are affecting not only the plants that are eating, but the entire system on the forest floor. Deer facilitate, meaning encourage, non-native earthworms. When you have high deer abundance, you have more earthworms. We don't understand why that is the case, but we are not the only ones that are finding it. People in Wisconsin are finding it, and in Ontario are finding it, in Ohio and Indiana. So we were the first to describe the pattern. But when you have more earthworms, you have less litter on the ground, less room for salamanders to live, less room for insects to thrive in there. And so there's this convoluted thing that we don't fully understand how this all works together. But also with deer in the system and earthworms in the system, you get more invasive plants like barberry or the honeysuckle or so, right? Multiflora rose, all those things. It's connected, but it's not suitable at the present time to give you monitor the amount of ground beetles that are running around in your woods to then be able to tell you need to reduce the deer numbers. We are not at that level that we understand that. So we are at the level of browsing where we can go to a plant and say, what happened to you? I know you're here, you're no longer here, and we know what a rodent cut a stem or a deer browsed the stem because the sign is different, okay? So we can follow this up, so we can clearly assign, hey, you were shorter today than you were the last time that I was there because a deer nipped off a certain amount of tissue. I would love to be able to work with insects on that one. I would love to be able to work with salamanders on that one, but it's too complicated, and the direct linkage between deer numbers or deer browse and number of salamanders, this or that, has not been established, so I can give that to you as a metric. We can think about birds, for example, too, right? So we have done acoustic surveys. I think they did that at the, did you do it at, is Jax there?
Jax is not here, no.
Okay, so I think they even did acoustic recordings at the Nature Center. So this has been developed at the Lab of O, right? You could put out monitoring devices. There's a story in the New York Times, I think, this morning about people doing reforestation. I think in where was that? Or thinning of forests, I think, where they put monitoring devices out there, record bird sound. You run it through a program and tells you what species are there. We have done that as well, but it's difficult to say what species should be there. Size of the forest fragment matters, and so it's not there that I could say, hey, you need that many nests of an ovenbird to say you have good habitat quality, right? So so I think you would call this squishy data. So that's why I don't want to go in there and say, I don't know, maybe 5 nests or 10 nests or 3 nests or no nests. What the bird community would be in a forest depends on tree age, tree composition, all these other factors. So in that sense, it's not useful at that time for what you are after here.
Okay.
That was beyond a 6-year-old, but I hope you got it.
Yeah, barely. Anybody have any questions for Bernd?
Bert, I guess I listen to everything, and at the end you're saying it's the lethal is the way to go, and then to present that in a way that the community could understand or maybe be more comfortable with. It sounds to me like it's a combination of this is a sustainability. It's bigger than just deer. It's a sustainability issue and an ecological balance issue. And is there a way to present this in such a way that we're trying to preserve and protect a forest so we can protect the biodiversity, we can have more diversity in the pollinators, birds, and small mammals, and also by providing the rejuvenation of the understory, we would reduce erosion and silting of water bodies, as well as improving the carbon sequestration of these areas?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why I went to my second slide, I think. I don't manage deer because I want fewer deer. I manage deer because I want more birds, more pollinators, more insects, all these other things to thrive, right? So when I see people argue, hey, please don't kill Bambi, I said, well, Bambi, even though it doesn't want to, kills all these other places, or it takes the habitat availability away for the birds and the insects and the plants. So that's why we need to manage deer, to get better living conditions for all the other things. And you can package that in that way. That also resonates with when we survey people for when would they accept lethal control. It's when you argue exactly how you argue it. We do it for, I don't like the word balance because it's always up and down in ecology, but we do it for carbon sequestration. We do it for the critters in the litter. We do it for the critters on the forest floor, the birds and the salamander, and all these other things. The rich community, and if we have a rich and healthy community of lots of different thriving organisms, we will do better, and deer are part of that. But right now, they're ecological bullies. And so, through no fault of their own, I think it's our responsibility to level the playing field a little bit, so other organisms can live out their lives, and not just the deer.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great. And just going back to your bar chart slide, just so I understood that properly, is that the one about where you had hunting, sterilization, and then a control method, and where they were not caged, where the plants were not caged, you saw no meaningful delta between any of those, whether it was just control, recreational hunting.
You want me to share it again? I can share it again.
That'd be great. I just want to make sure I understood what the slide was. Yeah, that's the one. So is this slide saying that there's no meaningful delta between sterilization, hunting, or doing nothing? Is that fair?
So since you're now no longer arguing as a 6-year-old, but an established statistician, I'll tell you these are the means from about 20 different sites.
Okay.
Okay? If I were to plot the standard errors in here, they would overlap. So there is no statistical difference, So there's no statistically significant difference between the rates of survival in the sterilization zone versus the hunting zone, whereas the control zone where there is no hunting, no sterilization, no deer management. They're all the same.
And that's the survival rates of the plants, correct?
That's the survival rate of the oaks that we planted.
Correct.
Yes.
All right, great. Just want to make sure I got that right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I don't have any further questions. Stephanie, do you have any? Ellie, do you have any questions? Jasmine?
No, this has been super helpful. Thank you for coming and educating us.
Maybe one last question.
Yep.
We, as I think you know, have a nature center here in Rye where they have created a deer exclusion area.
Yep.
And obviously appreciate your comments about needing to have patience and have a multi-year approach towards identifying and hopefully solving our problem. Is there any way that you can think of that we can use that exclusion area to try to jumpstart, if you will, our analysis of the amount of damage that's occurring to the nature center area by comparing the exclusion area vegetation to the non-exclusionary vegetation?
So Jack's shared some of his information with me. So I've looked at what he has done or what they have done, right? Maybe with some outside contractors too. And it becomes really, really difficult because there is not the same amount of effort that was going in on monitoring outside than what was going on in monitoring inside. Because he had areas where there were lots of invasive plants presence that were monitored, and there was another category. So it becomes really, really difficult to do that. So I told you I have 50 different exposures throughout New York, from the Hudson River to here, of different sizes and others. And so we have tried because we thought, oh, we're going to see changes very quickly in our fenced areas. That only happens if you cut down the forest, and there's lots of resources that come in, and everything regrows. Obviously, you don't want to do it at the nature center, right? You like your established tree canopy and everything else. So the way that I can see being able to work with the existing network that Jax and others at the nature center have created is using it as a zone where we could plant an oak or a couple of oaks in the exclosure and then see what is happening outside. But it would be an assessment that needs to be done at the same time because they exclosed an area or enclosed an area that was highly valuable for what they had. Okay, I'm an advocate for doing that in the places where we still have good biodiversity if such areas were to exist in Rye or anywhere else. So fencing, while it is a band-aid, it's important to stop the bleeding. So you are right that these places can serve as inoculation points for species that then need to disperse out of the protected areas into the places that have become livable again if you make that deer management effort work, right? So they are really useful as stepping stones, as inoculation things, and if I were to be part of whatever your assessment is going to go and going forward, that would be an attempt that I would want to make with the Nature Center, say how can we utilize what they already have going forward, but solely as a justification because it's one single small spot on the landscape, right? So how does the county parks or the golf course or something else, it's very difficult to compare these places, right? You don't have the same currencies going forward. So I would love to use the data, but it's going to be tough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. It's a wonderful demonstration tool, though, right? So for people that maybe, I haven't seen inside, outside of exposures at the Nature Center, so I don't know. But I do maintain some of the exposures because I can get people to come and see what has happened over the last 5 or 10 or 15 years where we have these exposures, right? Some will say, oh, it's incredibly slow. Yes, it's incredibly slow. But some individuals that are protected for certain species are now hit high instead of being down to just one leaf. So in that sense, it's a wonderful educational tool. And I think that's part of the mission for the Nature Center, that you have to allow the residents of Rye to see what could be,
Right.
right? Or maybe even what should be.
Right. Got it.
Yep. Thank you, Bernd. Bernd, thank you very much. I will be, I'll give you a call.
Actually, I had a question
Oh,
before.
sure, go ahead.
Bert, maybe it's a quick one. I've heard about this chronic wasting disease. Is that anything that's happening in New York State, or is it entering this area?
No, not right now. We don't have chronic wasting disease in New York State. And so it's in Pennsylvania. It's associated typically with deer farms. That's where it kind of spreads out. We had incidences of chronic wasting disease associated with a taxidermist in Oneida County, so that's a little in the area of Syracuse, who processed, I don't know whether it was an elk or something from out west. He had a captive deer herd, and that then got infected by chronic wasting disease. The state made an effort to cull all the deer in the vicinity and test them all for chronic wasting disease. There was no chronic wasting disease that was identified outside of this exclosure of the taxidermist. So at the present time, while the state is on high alert, there is no chronic wasting disease within New York State at the present time.
So, Chris, if I go hunting in Pennsylvania, I cannot bring any bones or a rack back from Pennsylvania. I have to debone everything, and I can't bring it into the state of New York.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So, yep, Bert, I will give you a shout. Thank you so much for your time. This was very
You're
useful.
welcome.
I think I learned a lot. I hope everybody else did. And you know, it's always I've talked to you twice before. It's always a pleasure. And I will be in touch. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Good
thank
luck
you
with
very
your
much.
deliberations. You know how to find me, and if I can help you as you move forward, I'll be happy to do so.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Have a lovely night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Great. Just following up on that, I think that we can ask Bernd to give us a proposal if how he or what he thinks how he could help us, just to see if there is something that he could do for us. I mean, he's been cited over 10,000 times in all the literature and so forth, and he's run that 10-year study, that Red Oak study, and he's tried everything under the sun and documented it all. So it might be worthwhile just to see what he has to say.
Absolutely, I agree.
I mean, he's like the guy in game management.
Doesn't hurt to ask him for a proposal.
Yeah, doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Anybody disagree?
No, I'm good with that. I think it'll be really helpful to bring the experience because he's kind of lived through it too, so it becomes a nice kind of framework to copy.
Yeah, don't know if we can afford them, but it'll be interesting to see if what he says. Okay, so
just so I'm aware, you're asking him for a proposal, or you would be asking him for a proposal to basically measure the effects?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Correct. For the forest health assessment,
Sure, got understood.
because he doesn't believe in deer density at all, apparently.
Yeah, so kind of speaking, on that point, Ryan, then kind of the work that I guess Steph and I have been looking at may not be as relevant or as pressing, and you know, I guess when we go through the list of what's next, we should just keep that in mind.
Well, so so Dr. Bagley Miller, right, who Chris, Ellie, and I have spoken to, disagrees with him. And Susan Kalis, who we're going to have I'm going to try to get next meeting to come speak to us, she disagrees with that theory as well. So he is not the only guy out there and not the definitive answer on anything. He is just one point of view that he has done stuff and he has an opinion. So I think we should listen to everybody. And I think that metric is useful in if we are to, let's pretend for a moment that we go down the road and we say, look, we have a problem. And it's a big problem, and we have this many deer, or whatever. We have 150 deer per square mile, just argument's sake. How are we going to know how effective our measurements are if the next year we sit there and go, well, how many deer per square mile do we have this year? We don't do a study to find out how many we have. So we need, it's not a indicative that we have a problem. It's an indicator as to are we being effective in managing the numbers down. Because he even had the numbers up there on that chart, which you had to read from right to left, where it was 100 deer per square mile down to 50. And he said, well, this is, look what we've done. So in a way, he was kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth, where he's saying it's not relevant at all, but hey, look, I went from 100 to 50. So I think it's a secondary metric it's an important metric, and other people may disagree with it.
So he's saying, okay, I look at the forest, I see deer, I see damage to the forest, right?
Right.
Okay. And then he's supporting lethal methods,
Correct.
right? So what you're going to do is you're going to look at the forest over the years and see how the forest is regenerated or not.
Right, but year
But
over
you do, but you're killing the deer.
right, but year over year, you can directionally see if you're making an impact. So if you have 150 deer per square mile year one, and then year two, you have, just like the Irvington study was 141, and then it went down to 130, and then it's down at 125. You can see year over year, they are making impact to downward, thus saying like, directionally, we should be in a better place, but we're not going to know anything for 5 to 10 years because that's how long the forest will take to revitalize.
Well, you'll see more sprouts each year.
In theory.
Well, okay, but yes, well, that's the.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the theory is, less. What we're understanding is that last year there'd be more
Yep.
sprouts that we'd see.
Zigzag, whatever.
There'd be less damage to the zigzag and the blue stem.
Yeah.
So
I've
it's
never even heard of those plants before.
so it makes sense. It does make sense to hire these the drone surveys
Right.
to give us a baseline, so we know going in, and then assuming that the city approves, hunting on public lands and
Or whatever the method is.
okay, well, all right.
No, I mean,
I'm trying to okay, but all right, but yeah, I gave it to you with your hypothetical. I'm just saying, so that happens. So then we see like if it's been approved, and we see like Rye Nature Center or the with the county, like he was talking, like if all of a sudden it's documented like 20 or 30 deer were culled, and then we see, so we had the initial amount per se,
Right.
and then we know how many were killed each
And
year,
then
and then we see we
the
start to
drones,
see.
so we see the drones and how many are there, and then we can say directionally are we moving in the right direction.
And then we see the impact on the ground.
Correct. I think but again, let's listen to Dr. Kalis and E.J. Borchert from the state before we make any assumptions or anything.
I think we should exercise all options, listen to all parties. It
Yeah.
makes
I-
good
I-
Could you
sense.
speak up like this?
What's that?
Could you speak up like this? Maybe?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I think it makes a lot of sense to explore all other opportunities and options and speaking to other
Yeah, we
parties
just
and
heard a
get
pitch.
their
I didn't know
exactly.
factory pitch it before
Yeah.
that was a pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
That was his point of view.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to old business. Jasmine and Stephanie, any update on deer population data?
So we don't have any updates. We're still in the motion of working with John just to try to see if we can get approved for that for heat seekers to come in and actually do a
Yeah.
test run. So that's still in motion. I don't know if you have any update on that.
So I spoke with our attorney and the public safety commissioner.
Yeah.
Generally, they're okay with it. They would want details to approve, so you can get details, and preferably if you guys would vote on it. If it's something you want to do, just give me a nod tonight. Again, if there's no cost to the city for a test, I don't see it as a big problem. I just want to make sure that PD knows. And again, we're probably going to want some kind of liability waiver
Yeah.
from them, just something saying, the city's not responsible. So, but I can have our attorney send that
So,
to you once, we have a date and everything
so,
in mind.
so I propose a motion that we do a free test run with heat seekers so that Stephanie and Jasmine can take a look at how it operates and how the process works.
Just
Second.
second or third, whatever, just where's it conducted?
So that's, I think it's still to be determined, right? So I think the last that we spoke, it was like in the vicinity of the DPW area.
Yeah,
Is what
I would think behind Sterling Field, up at the top there, you could launch off there, and then there's all that marshland back there.
Right.
And you could.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
more curious
Oh, no,
if there's
no,
anything else.
that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any objections?
No.
Okay, motion passed. Okay, Brian, any update from the DPW on car strikes?
So DPW's recording them as of just before Veterans Day. They started recording them.
Okay,
We've had two. I don't think it's been long enough or two that they picked up. I don't think it's been long enough.
Okay. yeah, so I was told by a DPW worker, that wishes to remain nameless, that it's probably like 3 or 4 a month is what his estimate would be.
Based on last couple weeks, it's reasonable. But
Yeah.
we'll generate this data, and once I
Yeah.
have a month or two put together, I'll send it to you guys.
Great.
Where
Community
are
out,
they reporting it? How are they reporting and where are they reporting those incidents?
So they're putting it. I didn't ask for details. Our city engineer and I believe our assistant superintendent or general foreman created some kind of spreadsheet database just for recording this with the details of the incidents.
So it has a location and.
It has location, and I'll have to, again, I was gonna, after we get a few more, maybe
Okay.
end of the month, take a look at what they have, and
Maybe for the next meeting, you could circulate the draft,
sure,
the report.
Yeah.
sure.
Like-
I'm sure it'll just be a printout with some details, but
Yeah.
I can do that.
Hopefully it'll only have
That should be
2
good.
incidents on it, it might have more.
It'd be nice if we didn't get any more.
Right.
Absolutely. Sure, no problem.
Is- I wonder if that becomes also available for the public, that they could go into this website and record it, but obviously you gotta trust that data, right? Just like, people.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's, I don't think it has kind of a user interface, but what I'm sure we could do is, from, again, my conversations with them is we could generate reports and publish those, maybe in your documents
Right.
page, if that's something you guys wanna do at some
Yeah.
point. If you decide after 6 months I wanna publish this, just,
well, we're gonna have to sync up with the PD then, to see if there's anything that was recorded that wasn't, let's say I'm driving my car down the road, I smash into a deer.
Sure.
Deer runs off into the woods, but DPW is not involved. We're gonna also need to coordinate to see what the PD is actually getting reports on.
yeah, I mean, it'd be, ideally, you'd look at 2 side by side and say where we overlap.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
End up with a
Yeah, yes,
slightly higher-
exactly.
And I think they have enough sense now to know that we're established and we're looking for this kind of information. So I think the records department is well aware, and I think they've been talking about it internally.
Great. All right, community outreach. Has there been an update? Ellie, Chris, and Stephanie.
Ellie? She's going.
Ellie, you're on mute.
Yeah, so, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. I'm sorry, my staff and I were talking about community outreach, I don't know, Steph, do you want to talk about the work that you sent me? I know it wasn't like finished or
So I wanted to-
polished,
yeah.
but I thought it was pretty good.
So I just basically did a little bit of a document, which I didn't come prepared with, unfortunately, because I wanted the three of us to sit and talk through it before we presented it. But I just kind of took a quick stab at what it would look like to actually, some things that we can explore and look at as far as how we're gonna reach out to our community, in what ways, what lengths, over, obviously, what we discussed was, city website, and that kind of thing, but again, it was very premature, so
Okay,
we haven't had a chance to talk about it.
that's fine. That's great. Okay, so we'll table that for, we'll come back to that at the next meeting. Mine just didn't have a
Yeah,
backlog.
mine doesn't either. Do you know how to back? Okay.
All right, so coordination with the county. So I've been talking with Dan Atchison, who runs the Deer Management for Westchester County. I have an actual very good relationship with him, or the beginnings of a good relationship with him, to the point where I have his personal cell phone, which he said, do not give this out to anyone. And I found out what the cause of friction is between county parks and Rye City. And the cause of friction is the last time that this type of committee got spun up, the city of Rye was making statements that we're going to need to hunt on the marshland and Edith Reed, this is what's going to happen and this is how we're going to do it. And the county did not like that at all. Also, individuals were emailing the director of the county parks and Dan directly, representing that they were representing that they were from the city of Rye, whether they were or were not, and they were saying we need to do X, Y, and Z, and the county did not like that at all. So the county is kind of like, until you guys are serious about something, come talk to us. So the proposal from Dan was that when the new mayor gets set, that he meets with the director, Dan, and if I'm in tow, that's fine, or Brian's in tow, that's fine. But to sit down and say, we're establishing how this will work, as opposed to, Rye City is not dictating to us what we're going to do on county land. Now the good news is the director involved is also the mayor of Rye Brook. So that would be like a benefit for Mr. Nathan to kind of sit down and talk with him anyway, mayor to mayor, and kind of have a conversation. That is the proposal. John, I don't know if you want to have a brief word with Mayor-elect and see if that's something he would like to do. I don't know if you want us to approve that as a course of action or how you want to do it, but that was coming from the county.
So what is again, the mayor, or the mayor-elect is gonna do with the.
Of course.
Brian and I can make suggestions.
Right, that would, I'm just saying a suggestion.
What is, if you're suggesting that basically the mayor meets with
the director of parks and
and
Dan.
says we're serious about.
We're serious about it, we mean business, and if we're going to do it, what are the protocols that the county needs us to do on county land or work with the county?
Okay, but are we there yet where we want to say we're gonna do this on county land? It doesn't seem like.
No, but I
Are we
think.
asking, are we making a specific request? I just wanted to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can we clarify what it is? Because
Well,
it makes a
okay.
huge difference.
I think anything from flying a drone over county land.
That's an it that I think we're supportive of.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying we're talking about calling anything, hunting anything. What I'm saying is, just to collaborate with them, we're going to need to mend fences, is my understanding.
I'll talk about it with Brian, I can't make any.
Yeah, no, understood, but it's, it's,
I hear your,
like,
I hear your message.
the message is like, I asked to fly a drone over it, and the response back was, we're not so interested in that.
Okay. Gotcha.
You're gonna need to get a permit, and you're gonna need to, and we don't like flying drones over our property.
Mhm.
And so, that's kind of, it was an immediate
Sure.
stop right there.
I've dealt with Jason.
I thought you
Jason
were
Klein,
on phone.
we were talking about.
Yeah.
I just had a catch. I know.
Anyway, I dealt with Jason Klein. Yeah, he's a very approachable guy. I mean, I think it sounds like it's just like an informal conversation. It's like, Jason, you know, this is where
Yeah,
we're
no, I
at.
don't
We
think
have
it's-
we have this committee. This is where we'd like to go forward. We'd like to work together. You know, tell us
Yeah.
what works for you.
I just think that, I think it would do a lot of good if the mayor-elect reached out and just had a full conversation. That's all.
But there's a lot more luggage involved than just simply deer,
No, yeah, there's,
to be clear.
no, understood, but we're not even gonna be able to fly a drone over probably the two key areas that we need to in order to.
You don't, me too, it's me.
Right, okay. Brian, so we spoke,
I mean, basically, we are seemingly dead with Harrison and Mamaroneck. They've been wholly unresponsive?
Again, I haven't, since last time,
Okay, but,
my understanding was I wasn't gonna continue to reach
No,
out,
but as of,
but yeah,
as of today, irrespective of
Yeah.
whatever recent efforts made, we have gotten nowhere with Harrison or Mamaroneck.
no. Mamaroneck was a clear negative.
Okay,
Harrison, again, you may wanna try when the new mayor is, I believe they elected a new mayor.
Mhm.
And again, maybe you'd have more luck with that administration, and it's just one of those things where it's not a concern, for them and this current administration. But
And I can help you with that.
I
I can help you with the new administration.
okay, that's fine, I mean, just,
Yeah.
because honestly, and I think, it was mentioned earlier, you have to engage more than the 5-ish square miles of Rye that we have. It's not realistic to do anything. And then if you start excluding out some of our other large landowners, who are principally the city and the county, right, to go to the rest of my group, I mean, I've spoken to the folks at Appowamus and at Osborne Home, which are among the bigger private owners, and they have, and I think I reported this previously, kind of mixed views on deer. There are some who, enjoy their presence and find them, consistent with their spirit of what Rye should be like, and at the same time, they do feel some frustration, particularly those that have private property over at the Osborne, that they spend their time, gardening only to have the deer consume their efforts.
Yeah.
So, which is completely understandable, like, we all get that, it's all very natural. So, I don't know if there's any particular reason to continue this little effort on my part, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't mind spending time, but I hate wasting time. I feel like I'm wasting time. So, my suggestion would be, unless somehow we can get the other communities to engage, that we simply drop this and fold what's left of the large landowners, because quite frankly, there really aren't any meaningful ones other than the county and the city, school district, has property.
no, I think that's fair, and then, I think your experience and guidance is very well needed, and you should
Didn't get us anywhere, so.
help where you can, I guess, is the thing, and jump in. If somebody is running into a roadblock, needs some hands, reach out to Brian, I would say. Okay, on to new business. I'm going to, for the next meeting, try and get EJ Orchard who I know Stephanie has spoken to, and I believe Chris has spoken to, and then Dr. Kalis, who is different than Bernd in approach and in personality, for sure. So she comes from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. She's also highly regarded. She spoke at the Natural Areas Association that I attended, and she's semi-retired and currently working on something called the Trillium Road out in western Pennsylvania related to forest regeneration. So she's also been cited over 10,000 times, like Dr. Blossey, but again, comes from a different perspective, so I think it's always good to hear multiple perspectives on things. Ernst Borchert, or EJ, is the deer biologist for the DEC, and I've had conversations with him, and he has been very informative to me, as I think he has been to Stephanie and Chris, and Ellie, I believe, has spoken to him as well. And he is helpful, and he is very interested in our efforts here, and the state believes that it's a very valuable effort that we're trying here. Was his words, not mine. So that's kind of it for new business. We talked about the standard committee communications and public reaching to the public, which posting everything early, which we did this time.
Good job.
Thank you. Despite not being on this continent. Forest regeneration study we're going to continue to look at. We're going to look at, for the next meeting, community outreach. From there, I'm going to turn it over to John. And I think the big 800-pound gorilla in the room is not me, but the budget.
Sure, so, we didn't include a specific line in the budget for management activities. That was for a couple reasons. One, it's just a tight budget. It's very difficult to justify adding anything when we're looking at the level of increases we're looking at this year, just from non-discretionary personnel costs like health insurance. But, because we don't know exactly what you guys are gonna have to spend, it serves you just as well. If we have one-off studies, we're gonna be able to fund those. We'll probably have to bring those to the city council to ask them for a transfer, but if anything, that enhances transparency to have you or Steph come and say, we need this for this reason. They're gonna wanna see that this early on in the process. And then again, if a year from now, we have a more established management program where we can say, look, it's gonna cost $25,000 every year for the next 10 years, that's more of a, an item we would include in our operating budget. But again, when you have a need, the city council and city manager's office is gonna evaluate it, and we're gonna do everything we can to meet those needs.
So John, I'll tell you what the problem is,
Tell me.
okay? Done this a lot,
Mhm.
okay? You pitch a vendor, they pitch you. Okay? You pitch with no money, they have no interest.
Mhm.
We don't have a budget, we're not credible. We cannot go to a professional company, someone who's gonna charge us money, whether it's a professor, a White Buffalo, whomever, right? And have a credible conversation with them and say, I wanna do this, and they're like, okay, tell me what your budget is. I really don't know, I gotta go and find out, but why don't you tell me what it's gonna cost? And so their reaction to that is, I'm not gonna waste my time, candidly, putting together a pitch book and figuring out what it's gonna cost, and coming down and chatting with you, and making a presentation, if you have no idea how much money you have to spend. It's not commercial.
Right now, Jasmine and I we have, the vendors we did reach out to, and we did get initial, quotes from. They are actively, reaching out on a regular basis, asking for updates.
Yeah, they need to know what's your budget. Do you have money? Don't tell me you're gonna get it. That doesn't work.
Okay, so again, we have the money,
No, you don't have the money, okay?
Okay,
If you don't set it aside and say, this is for deer management, you don't have the money. You have this fact that you have a bank account that maybe I could put aside this, but you don't have the money, and it's just not realistic for the group to actually go out and be credible without a budget. And this is not new. I mentioned this in August.
No, I think, to Brian's point, and I agree, is that the vendor, right, because I'm dealing with the World Bank on something. If they don't have the money, I don't believe the deal is ever gonna come, right? If they have to go and ask for the money, then I'm waiting for Godot until that actually happens. So, we're not asking for, $100,000, we're asking for $35,000 to go and do these initial studies. And then from there, we'll be able to actually answer the question that the council has asked us to answer, which is, do we have a deer problem? We don't know, and we're never going to know until we do these studies. So if we can't get a line item for a small amount of money, realistically, how can we actually go out there and answer the question we've been charged to answer, right? Otherwise, it's just, to quote someone smarter than me, kabuki theater. We're running around doing stuff that, without any way of actually being able to answer the question. I'm just, like, put yourself in our shoes, right? We're all
Put yourself in the shoes of a vendor who's trying to make money, who's approached by someone who says, I haven't got any money, but could you tell me how much this is gonna cost?
you guys have provided me with several quotes, and I have a feeling that all those vendors, if anything, if we have a budget, I mean, they may tailor it more, but I think
Of course
those
they
are
will.
accurate.
Of course they will. They will tailor, because someone's going to tailor their delivery of a custom-made product to the available budget. Like saying, I want to build a house. What's your budget? I'm not really sure yet. Well, how big of a house were you thinking about having?
Got it.
How big of a house can you build me?
But then again,
You
Brian,
gotta know the number.
but also didn't Begley just give us a proposal?
We've given you, he's already said, we've given him a number of different numbers.
Had
We said it was
proposals. I don't
$35,000 or
understand.
$40,000, what we said.
Yeah.
Okay, in probably September.
No, I understand that, but I mean,
Okay.
I keep hearing like, you can't talk to vendors. I mean, vendors could say, we'd like to, like this gentleman tonight, it's like, well, could you give us a proposal? He'd be happy to give us a proposal, give us numbers.
Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you, from my experience, you don't get into a serious conversation with serious people until they know you've got some sort of budget. We can't have a meaningful conversation with them because they don't know how much we're prepared to spend.
I think that for me, just from my perspective, is it's almost contingent. It's like, hey, can I have money to go do something you've asked me to do? And then at any point, the city council can say, no, we don't want to do this anymore. And we've got a new city council coming in. So how do we know that the effort that we've already put in is actually going to be carried forward to the next administration? And we don't.
That's correct, you do not. You have to go to the city council, you're gonna have to ask for this. It's not for lack of trying that you guys aren't in the budget, but you don't have an operating expense from our financial
Okay.
team's view.
So-
This is, I will happily go ask Brian again tomorrow, but we've had this conversation, I can't say I disagree with him. This is the way it is for now.
I make a motion that John ask Brian to try to get us a line item in the budget. Anybody second?
Second.
Anybody oppose? Motion passed. And then when
Do you wanna
is,
put a dollar figure on that?
I believe we said $35,000 is what we said in September.
yeah, I would take what our,
We said $35,000 in September. Give them a hard number, don't play around with it, that's the
Yeah.
number. They can come back and say it's 15 or it's 40
yeah,
or
that's
0.
fine, that's fine.
I'll do
And,
it.
and when is the next city council meeting?
The next city council meeting is December 3rd.
December 3rd?
Yeah.
Brian, Brian Stefan, let's talk after this, see if, when you guys can go there. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make December 3rd.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, where were we? Budget, okay,
Well, actually, just to be clear, I mean, you're gonna pose this tomorrow, and we're gonna get some type of response in terms of it makes sense for you to come to the December meeting or not.
You'll get a response within by next Wednesday.
okay, perfect. All right, okay, we are now on to the public comment period. Does not seem to be a public here today, which was a nice surprise. So we will move on from there. Any other business?
Hearing none,
All right,
motion to adjourn?
Seconded?
Third.
All those in
Motion.
favor?
aye, motion carried.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Tell Kevin happy birthday.